Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the series with the Miami Marlins down in South Florida. The Phillies, they won the series, but they did not sweep. They had a good opportunity to. So how do we evaluate that? Well, I'll break down that and some individual performances from the weekend's games. Also, we've got a split matchup with the Mets, 2 up at Citi Field, 2 back down at Citizens Bank Park. What are the expectations for those 4 games? And we'll wrap up with something that I think has been a really smart move by the Philadelphia Phillies in this series that they just finished against the Marlins. All of that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm Connor Thomas, your host. Thank you so much for checking us out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube. Honestly, subscribing to the YouTube is the number one thing you can do that helps out this podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, check us out. I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So the Phils won their series down in South Florida against the Miami Marlins in a near empty stadium. It sounded busy a couple of the games. It was Fleet Weeks. A lot of the armed forces were down there. A couple ships were docked in the area around Miami. A lot of Phillies fans made the trip. It sounded like a Phillies crowd throughout the whole series, but it was a series win. So you might be saying after the loss in the final game, a walk-off loss in game 3 of that series, why doesn't it feel good? And I think part of the explanation for that is a good thing. We expect the Philadelphia Phillies to go out and win basically every time they take the field. And when you have Zach Wheeler on the mound, you very much expect the Phillies to win every time they step out on the field. And when you have Zach Wheeler and the best record in baseball, and you're playing the Miami Marlins, who are terrible, you expect them to win every single darn time. So frankly, series wins aren't up to expectation against the team like the Marlins, I guess to say. See, I knew this was going to happen because in Friday's episode, I broke my cardinal rule. I predicted a sweep. I always try and go, let's just win series. And this time I went sweep. And now I'm sitting here like, man, if I just stuck to my guns and did what I always did and talked about winning series and collecting wins, win more than you lose, and you're going to end up with a great record, I'd be feeling better. But I got to be honest, I'm feeling like probably a lot of you are right now, where there was a missed opportunity, at least in the final game of this series, but not getting the sweep down there in Miami. And it's hard to feel that way after the Phillies win game 1, 8-2, win game 2, 8-3. Like, they thoroughly dominated the Marlins in the first 2 games. Ranger Suarez was outstanding again. Taijuan Walker had probably his best looking start of the year so far since coming back off the injured list. So there's a lot of positives to take out of this series. What do I chalk up to like today's loss to? Because I'm recording this on Sunday, by the way. And this is an immediate reaction. The game just finished up about, I don't know, like an hour ago. What do I chalk this up to? It's what I talked to you about. I talked to you about it with Ranger Suarez, with Zach Wheeler, with Alec Bohm, with this Phillies team in general. There's going to be days where they have off days. The offense had an off day against the Blue Jays in that short 2-game series, the second game, the afternoon game on Wednesday of this past week, where they just didn't really hit, and they still were in it at the end. And today, the best pitcher on this team, now, I think Ranger Suarez is the hottest pitcher right now, but the best overall pitcher is Zach Wheeler. He's getting paid like it. He deserves to get paid like it. He just didn't have his stuff today. And guess what? That's going to happen, folks. The best pitchers in history have days when they don't have their best stuff. It's such a long season, such a big sample size. There are going to be games like this that sneak in there. So listen, Wheeler gave up 6 today. That's not going to happen probably for the rest of this contract against the Miami Marlins, unless the Marlins significantly change what they're doing. But it was just one of those days. Wheeler didn't have his best stuff. And they were talking on the broadcast about, Garrett Stubbs catching and JT Realmuto took a day because he was not feeling his best. Rob Thomson wanted to get him off his feet. He said, I don't think it's even the pitcher-catcher matchup. I honestly just think one of those days where Zach Wheeler didn't have a feel for stuff. And anyone who's played this game knows that there are going to be times where your stuff just doesn't feel like it's supposed to. So I'm going to chalk this up to one of those weird games. And here's the great part. Like, here's the upside of today's game. I don't take a lot out of the first two games of the series because that's how you're supposed to play the Marlins. There are individual things. Christian Pache had 5 hits in the first 2 games of this series. That's great to see for a guy who's not getting a lot of opportunity right now. Staying ready, adding to the depth on this team, that's going to make him better in the long run. Nick Castellanos breaking out a little bit. He went yard again today, went yard twice in the series. He's starting to hit the baseball hard a little bit, coming out of that slump that took a month's worth of time to start the season. Luckily, the team did all right in his absence of hitting the ball hard, but he's starting to figure some stuff out. Like, there are positive things. Ranger Suarez was dominant again. The bullpen today was awesome, but here's the number one thing that I took out of this series that I think everyone should keep in mind, right? Today's game, you'd already won the series. You didn't have your best lineup out there because JT Realmuto got a day. Kyle Schwarber had a day. We're going to talk about that when we preview the Mets series because Rob Thomson, not sure if those guys are going to go tomorrow in the opener against the Mets up at Citi Field. We'll see. They're just kind of working through some stuff right now, not injured list level of stuff, but some discomfort. So we'll keep you updated on that. But here's the thing with the way that the Phillies handled it. They have the best record in baseball. They had already won the series. Then you see your ace go out there in Zach Wheeler, and he doesn't have his best stuff. And you're down 6-3, and you're like, okay. Normal teams, you know what they do? It's a sleepy Sunday down in Miami, getaway day. We've been so good this year. Whatever. We'll mail it in. We can lose this one. You know what the Phils did? They battled back. They tied it up at 6. They went to extras. They fought in extras. Now, did they miss opportunities where they should have won that game? Absolutely. The bullpen went 5 scoreless. And then gave up the run to lose the game on the ghost runner rule, which isn't technically an earned run. Like, I still love that rule, partially because of how early I have to be up for my full-time job on the radio. 4 a.m. wake-ups, love early baseball games, but also because it saves your bullpen, it saves your arms. You don't want to go into the 15th or 16th inning anymore and just torch your bullpen for a week where you play a lot of divisional games. So I don't have an issue with that rule, but the bullpen was outstanding today. And they gave you an opportunity to win, and the offense fought through. Like, this team is just going to flat out battle. There's going to be very few games this year where the Philadelphia Phillies don't show up, where they just get absolutely beat off the field. It's not going to happen. They're going to battle through, and it's the business type mindset that this team has throughout the season, throughout spring training. Like, so far, they talked about it in spring training. They've talked about it all year. We're focused. We're zoned in. We want to get to where we've been the past couple of years and cash in on it. And they're starting to show that they truly are living by that mindset. And that's a great thing. There's some other guys that I want to give props to, mainly one other guy. Well, we'll go 2 other guys. Bryson Stott was outstanding. He had a huge hit in yesterday's game, an RBI triple with the bases loaded. He was monstrous in that game for the Phillies. He started to come out of a bit of a slump that he was in. We knew he was a better hitter than what he was doing at the start of the year. He's starting to show it. And this team has a bunch of guys contributing offensively. So I wanted to show some love to Bryson Stott, who's also had to deal with flipping around positions a little bit with Trey Turner currently on the injured list. That can sometimes take guys out of stuff, or sometimes it can make you be a little bit less tense at the plate because you're focusing on fielding, and maybe it loosens you up a little bit. Whatever the case may be, Bryson Stott had a great series, and Spencer Turnbull out of the pen. It's tough to make that adjustment to go from starting to the bullpen. A lot of people criticize that move, including me, because of how well he's done as a starter. But to this point, I'd say that you can't really fight the Phillies on that decision based on results. And Turnbull has looked solid out of the pen. I don't know if I throw him in a high leverage, like 1-run game in the 8th inning. Like, I don't know that he's there yet. It's going to take time to adjust and figure out what he can be as a reliever for this team. But he's been pretty darn good to start, about as good as you could have expected him to be, from going from a spot where he probably deserves to stay as a member of this rotation to now a bullpen guy. Like, I can't say enough good things about this team's mentality. That's the number one thing I see day in and day out on the baseball diamond. This team just attacks competition, and they battle through every game, even the ones that they have no right to be in. And they're not going to win every single game. They're not going to win like 140 games this year. There's going to be other losses on the schedule, but the ones that they lose are going to be hard fought, and they're going to win a lot more than they lose. So Successful series down in Miami? I mean, I guess by general standards. Did I expect them to sweep? Yes. Did I expect them to win today? Yes. So channel that energy, beat the crap out of the New York Mets coming up the next couple of games, like save that for Citi Field and use that momentum, and things will be all good. So it's not all bad in Phillies land. We're still the best record in baseball, still 2 more wins than anybody else in baseball. So we're totally fine with where the Philadelphia Phillies are at. But I will tell you what, just like the football team in this city has an arch rival, the baseball team in this city has an arch rival. And you might think it's the Braves. Oh, no, it's not. It's that team that plays up in Queens, and the feel of this fan base can change depending on how these next 4 games go. So we're going to preview the 4-game split series, I'm calling it, against the New York Mets coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, let's talk about Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Sounds good, right? Well, there's more that sounds good when you talk about Policygenius. They help you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step, so you can easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Do you know how annoying it would be to call like 5 or 6 insurance companies? You got a day gone, waiting on hold and talking to all these companies, preparing quotes that you're not studying what the best potential quote. Policygenius, this is what they do. All right. They have everything covered, and they give you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team that know everything they need to know about where your best interests lie. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. All right, let's preview this series with the New York Mets. So I kind of hinted at it before we got into this segment, right before I went into that ad read. And I said, just like the football team in the city, there's an arch rival for the baseball team. Because the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies have had these playoff showdowns the past few years, and the Braves are the reigning division champs for what feels like a billion years, like they're always that top team or one of the top teams in the division. That sustained success makes you think, okay, the Phillies rival are the Braves. But make no mistake, you ask Phillies fans, like long-standing Phillies fans, which team that they hate more, the Braves or the Mets? A lot of them are going to say Mets. I think a lot of it is proximity, that New York-Philly rivalry that really exists. But as much as you look at this series as another divisional series, you just played one against the Marlins, you played the Braves, why would this one be different? Mets series just feel different. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the Eagles could be 12-0 and playing the Cowboys in week 13, and the Cowboys could be, 1-11. But if you go out there and you lose to Dallas, the fan base is going to lose their mind. Now, I'm not saying anyone's going to lose their mind over this Mets series, because I don't expect the Phillies to struggle through this game. The Mets are 18-20. They're 2 games below 500. They're a solid baseball team, but they're not on the level of the Philadelphia Phillies. So I expect the Phillies to take care of business. We'll talk about that in a second, but this is an important series for the mentality of the fan base. You're going to want to beat the Mets, partially to be able to talk trash, but partially to show that those middle teams in the division, Washington, New York, you can handle them. And this is the only divisional team you haven't faced. You've taken care of business against the Nationals. You've taken care of business against the Marlins. You will see the Braves again. That was the opening series of the year. We'll get to a point where now that the Phillies are red hot and they've worked some stuff out, they're going to play the Braves again. We'll see how that goes, but it won't be for a while. So you're going to want to take advantage of this Mets series just for the psyche of the fan base. And the way we're going to look at it, right? Because it's dumb to treat these as 2 separate 2-game series. Just doesn't make sense from evaluating it. The Phils are playing 2 games up in New York at Citi Field, Monday and Tuesday. Then they come back down to Philadelphia, and Wednesday and Thursday they will play 2 games at Citizens Bank Park. So let's look at the pitching matchups, and let's talk about expectations for the series. Game 1, you got Christopher Sanchez against Sean Manaea. And those are pretty even-looking stat lines from those 2 guys so far. A 3.31 ERA for Manaea, a 3.22 for Sanchez, 1.46 WHIP for Sanchez, 1.39 for Manaea. Like 1 inning more for Sanchez thrown. Ks, Sanchez has more, but he's allowed more hits. Like, this is a pretty even pitching matchup. It's another lefty. So the Phils, after getting a steady diet of righties last week, they're getting a steady diet of lefties now. So advantage Phils, I suppose, but that's going to be one where the pitching matchup is pretty darn even. It's going to depend on the offense in game 1. Not as big of a pitching advantage as you normally see from this Phillies rotation. Game 2, Aaron Nola is going to face off against Jose Butto. And that's normally, I would say, that's another good pitching matchup. But Aaron Nola seems to just do well against the Mets. You remember a couple years ago, I don't even remember how many years ago it was, but he tied Tom Seaver, longtime Mets pitcher, Tom Seaver's record for consecutive strikeouts against the Mets at Citi Field. I'm sure that drove Mets fans crazy. For some reason, I feel like the Phillies didn't win that game. But whatever the case may be, Nola seems to handle the Mets pretty well. He doesn't mind pitching up there at Citi Field. So the hope is he'll be able to figure stuff out. Another pretty even pitching matchup there. Here, when we get later into the series, is where it gets a little bit different. You have Ranger Suarez pitching against Jose Quintana in the first game back down at Citizens Bank Park. Ranger Suarez is better than every pitcher on the planet. Quintana has a 5.44 ERA. So advantage Suarez, advantage Phillies in game 3. And then Taijuan Walker is going to face off against Christian Scott in the final game of this kind of split 4-game set. And while Scott's numbers are better, he's only thrown 12 innings this year, and Taijuan Walker's only thrown 18. But also, you look at a guy like Taijuan Walker, a much more established track record of success at the major league level than a guy like Christian Scott. So, I mean, career-wise, right? He's only thrown the 12 innings he's thrown here for the Mets. Those are his only career innings. He's 24 years old, a young guy that you're looking at and saying, okay, we can get after him. Also a righty. I would expect the Phillies to have the advantage in that matchup and the Suarez matchup. So that breaks down to 2 kind of washes, 2 advantage Phillies. What are the expectations for the series? I'd expect the Phillies to win 3 of these 4 games. I would. That's the goal. I'm going to go back to my roots, right? Because I made the mistake before the Marlins series. I'm not going to do it again. If they take 2 from the Mets and they lose 2, we move on. All right? We live with that. That's okay. I'm not going to be happy with it, but we live with that. That's not anything that should drive people insane, depending on how they lose the games. But we're okay with staying even. I'd expect the Phillies to win 3 of these 4 games, but if they split, okay. And you look at the overall numbers. I mean, the Phillies are better in average, have more runs, more hits, 8 more homers, and better on base percent. They're better in like every major statistical category than the Mets and a lot of teams in baseball. So the overall team the Phillies have is better than the Mets. Pete Alonso's still dangerous. Brandon Nimmo is a good RBI guy. Starling Marte is batting .255 to lead the team, and that's kind of shows you they're not really putting together enough hits to win consistently. But you respect the Mets as well. You don't have to respect the franchise. I hate the Mets, but you respect the talent level on the Mets team while understanding you're the better team and you should win 3 of the 4 games, or at the least split 2 games apiece. And if we're looking at this as a 4-game series, and I don't know how Major League Baseball technically qualifies it, the Phillies haven't lost a series since April 1st to April 3rd, the 2nd series of the year. So I wouldn't see that changing anytime soon. I don't think they played poorly in South Florida for us to change our opinions or expectations on that. That's my thoughts on the Mets series. We're going to have plenty to talk about this week as we get into that series. But another opportunity for a good one for the Phillies, and one they could really use considering they're playing, in my opinion, their biggest rival. But coming up, I think the Phillies did something really smart down in Miami this weekend. And I don't think a lot of people liked it, but I'll tell you why I did as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. But I got to tell you about PrizePicks first, because this is something everybody likes, right? There's no debate on PrizePicks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app. They've got more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch those winnings roll in. Baseball is rolling, and you don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Might be strikeouts that you want to pick, RBIs, first inning runs. Well, the Phillies had 3 of them today, thanks to a Nick Castellanos home run. Could have done a lot there with PrizePicks. Well, you take your pick of more or less on those numbers and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. PrizePicks has something for every sports fan, from baseball to basketball to even League of Legends, if you're into that. Not my thing, but it could be yours, and everything in between. Think about the names you could add in: LeBron, Shohei Ohtani, Connor McDavid, Jude Bellingham. Now, I know LeBron ain't playing anymore in the NBA playoffs, but still, you can put them all in the same entry. Go ahead and check out PrizePicks. It's awesome, and we're even going to cut you a deal just for listening to Locked On Phillies. You download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get a first deposit match up to $100. Again, you download the PrizePicks app today, use code LOCKEDONMLB, first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, a couple people I saw were annoyed with the lineup today, and annoyed with, okay, Garrett Stubbs is catching, and you've got Pache out there, and Whit Merrifield's playing, like all this stuff. I get it. Alec Boehm at first, it wasn't the typical Phillies lineup. There's 2 things I would say to defend it. The first is kind of I thought, an obvious thing, but we're still doing this lineup. The give up Sunday lineup. They've won with these type of lineups. This team's really deep. They have really good pitching. The offense is going to come out. They scored 6 runs today. That should have been enough in a Zach Wheeler start to win. Like, this game is on Wheeler not having his best stuff, and I'm not going to fault the guy because nobody's perfect. But I don't think we should still be having this freak out when we see a lineup that doesn't have all of the top players. And here's why the lineup wasn't like that. This is the other explanation, right? JT Realmuto, Rob Thomson said he wanted to get him off his feet. Kyle Schwarber needed a day. Don't know if they're going to be available for tomorrow because they're feeling like they're just not at 100% right now. Here's why this is so smart. The Philadelphia Phillies right now are 28-13. They're 15 games above 500. It is May, what is it? While I'm recording this, it's Sunday. So May 12th, by the way. Hope everyone had a good Mother's Day. Shout out to all the moms out there. But what are you playing for, right? And this might come out wrong. Like, I know they're trying to win every game. And I talked already this episode about the Phillies mentality with attacking every single day as a game you need to win. But the manager doesn't have to do that. When you get an inkling that these guys are not feeling their best, sit them down. As much as it's fun to see this team win pretty much every day, you're not playing for best regular season record. It doesn't feel any better than losing in the NLCS or losing in the World Series. You're not going to sleep easier at night if the Phillies do that, but they had the best record in baseball. Like, no. Will it make the path easier? Sure. And that's why you're trying to win these games. But the most important thing is be cautious with health. If you can skip a game against the Marlins and a game against the Mets to avoid a 6-week injured list stint because you played these guys through something, that's totally fine. The Phillies are being really cautious, making sure their guys stay healthy. It's a long season, and they have the depth to do it. So I think it's an incredibly smart way to attack things. The Braves have players playing every day. And then they get into the postseason, they don't really have the success they have in the regular season. Part of that is because the Phillies are a postseason juggernaut. Part of that is because some people believe that they are playing the regular season 100%, and maybe they should be playing it more at like 95% or 90%. And the Phillies right now, they're not trying to give games away, but they're trying to keep in focus what matters most. So I think it's really smart the way that Rob Thomson is handling protecting his players from potentially being overworked. There might be some old heads that are like, well, this guy played every day back in the 80s. Okay, listen, the Phillies are going to win plenty of games. They're going to protect their players. It's a new age. This is how athletes are handled, especially in the sport of baseball, when you're very cautious about like injuries to muscles and tendons and stuff like that. So I think the Phillies are being smart to leverage this great starting record that they have to get guys rest when they can so that they can sustain this success. That's just my take on it. I think I'm right. Feel free to disagree if you'd like. But either way, one thing we can't disagree on, the Phillies are still a darn good baseball team. They're still must watch every single night, and they will be the next 4 days as they take on the Mets. So we'll continue to talk about it in our next episodes, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. Once again, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And please make sure, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube or rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out. I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.